Hello, Ryan. How are you? You recently posted your first guest post on the Modern Quest, Taming the Stallion, and that was pretty good. I enjoyed reading that. So, I thought it was time to start a new series. I'm recording this video and sending it to you 1 week before it goes live on Substack and YouTube. You then have a week or so after that to send your response video, and then hopefully every 2 weeks or twice a month, once a month, we will send a response video to each other, and so on and so forth until the end of time. My idea for this first video came from a comment that you had left on one of my pieces. You had asked for me to give my Samwise impersonation of the speech that he gives towards the end of the Lord of the Rings The Two Towers movie. So this week I will provide that and my thoughts about the amazingness of how this speech informed and embraced the idea of modern quest. Before I get into all that, did you know that this speech is inspired by a similar conversation in the books? The dialogue in the books isn't so cut and dry the way it is in the movie, which makes sense because Tolkien was a literary genius. If you are having a conversation with someone, you don't have a commencement level speech to give with perfect grammar and flow of words. However, I'm not sure how Peter Jackson managed to get someone to write a speech that conveys the same ideas while keeping it easy for the viewer to understand. Second, and among similar lines, the speech is relatively short and remains immensely powerful. The shortness makes it simple for the viewer to follow and requires the writer to utilize every word with exquisite preciseness. Every line hangs with you while remaining non-complex. It's brilliant. The speech comes when Frodo and Sam are at a figurative and literal crossroads, when Frodo is at a place where he believes he cannot move forward because everything seems to be crashing in on him. Death and failure and death, seem inevitable. Frodo struggles with the whole, why bother trying if I'm going to fail and die anyway? Third, the speech would look great as a poster. I love disc plates. Maybe that's what I should do. Get the speech written out with a good font and post it on, order a disc plate with that. Do you think that would work? You know what? I'm getting sidetracked. Let's get on with it. I can't do this, Sam. I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here. But we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. All right, there we have our speech. Now I'm going to provide my line-by-line analysis of the piece. But in order to access this, you will need to head on over to the Substack, The Modern Quest, dltucker.substack.com. You can subscribe for free. It's completely free. There you'll be able to watch the entire video and read the written essay for the video. Also, if you pay for a subscription, you can vote on which speech, story, lyric, or letter I should cover next. I'll see you over there. Alrighty. The speech starts with Frodo's despair. I can't do this. Now, I learned in 3rd grade when my teacher said, I don't know, can you? As an answer to my question, can I use the restroom? I did not like that response at the time. It made me feel stupid. But now I can look back and see why she did that to all of her students. We quickly learned better grammar and proper usage. Saying can refers to an individual's realistic and physical limitations. A human can run a mile in less than 4 minutes. A human can't run a mile in less than 1 minute because it is outside current perceivable abilities. But in the future, who knows? Maybe we'll be able to break some records. The 4-minute mile stood as a barrier for decades, and it was commonplace to accept that it would never be broken, that it was physically impossible. So when Frodo says to Sam, I can't do this, he is expressing 2 things about the way he feels in the moment. The task ahead is impossible because it is beyond the limits of his perceived abilities, and 2, although he doesn't realize it, he is acknowledging that the task cannot be accomplished by him and him alone. He says, I can't do this, not we. The ring is weighing on him, and the burden of the task makes him feel alone, and the task, therefore, impossible. He feels this so much that although Sam, his best friend in the whole world, is right next to him, he still feels alone. That's the power of the burden the ring is putting on him, an immense strain in every sense. Sam then moves on to acknowledge Frodo's despair. I know. It's all wrong. This is the equivalent of divulging your latest life tragedy to a friend and him replying, that sucks, man. Sam gets it. He doesn't jump straight into, come on, the fate of the whole world is on us. We need to keep going for everyone's sake. No. When a friend is down on his luck, fight your instinct to solve the problem and instead sit down with him and say, that sucks. This sucks. By rights, we shouldn't even be here. The situation that they are in, simply put, right now, isn't fair. They were innocent little hobbits living in a small, faraway world when suddenly they were called into something far greater than themselves. A battle between good and evil that was started well before they were born. They were not responsible for the situation, yet they found themselves in it because of their sense of duty. But we are. Again, life isn't fair. Maybe it should be. But that's a much deeper philosophical question. But for now, life isn't fair. Accept reality. We shouldn't be here, but we are. And deciding to ask ourselves, what are we going to do about it, is the first step that we need to take towards acceptance. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Sam is appealing to some common knowledge between them, the great tales and stories that the 2 of them grew up listening to. Frodo knew what Sam meant when he said the ones that really mattered, possibly the ones that inspired them to come on this very journey. Full of darkness and danger they were. Hey, those people faced trials too. We are not alone. Maybe they were physically alone and isolated, but remembering what other people have gone through helps them to remember that they aren't quite alone as they might think. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? The tragedy of our life. We will never be the same as we are right now. That's the risk of living. The only constant in life is change, or, as Heraclitus said, life is flux. You can't go back. But here's the kicker. You can't go back to the way things were, regardless of engaging in the quest or not. Time will pass, your body will fade, and one day you'll look back and regret the things you didn't do, or be grateful at the life you lived through the risks you took and the things you did accomplish. As a listener in those stories, you didn't want to know the end to the story because you wished that they could just live their life without the heartbreak. But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Sam is bringing up the idea of a hope for a new tomorrow. He is bringing Frodo back to why they started on the quest at all, the reason they engaged in the quest to begin with, because they hoped for a better future, maybe for their kids, maybe for the fate of all free creatures of Middle-earth. At some point in your quest, there will come a time when you face darkness and you'll think everything is crashing in around you. And it'll certainly feel that way. But you can remember this, the darkness will pass. It sucks right now and you'll never be the same, but it will pass. And when it passes, you'll be able to see the past with a new, clear vision for the future. That's why hindsight is 20/20 and why experience, true experience, is the best teacher. We can look back at the other side of, all of our experiences and realize where we went wrong, the most crucial parts of our journey, and then use that knowledge to make better decisions in the future during the next shadow and darkness we will inevitably face. Those are the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if we are too small to understand why. Again, Sam is noticing something of serious psychological significance. You can act on feelings and intuition even if you don't understand those feelings and intuition. It's like a little kid listening to those stories doesn't understand the full breadth of sacrifice the hero is making, but is inspired and wants to be like them nonetheless. In a way, this is what Lord of the Rings did for me. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Sam's acknowledgement that when he heard those stories growing up, he didn't understand at the time why exactly they stayed with him. He just knew that they did. Now he really knows and understands why, because he's lived it. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. As we progress in our own quest in life, we have many chances to change our minds, to reevaluate them, even turn back, and in many cases, our choice to turn back wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing or an evil thing or a shameful thing. It would be viewed by others as the smart thing. To make my point clear, I will bring another fictional character into this, Harry Potter. Spoiler warning. When Harry learns that he's a Horcrux and that he must die by Voldemort's hand, what would have happened if he had said, "Sorry guys, I don't think I can handle that. I don't think I'm brave enough to handle that"? How would his friends have reacted? I'll tell you this, they would have been supportive. The audience may have booed, but they've also never been told to face death and be brave about it. Harry could have turned it down and died in a different way and still would have died a hero. But instead of choosing an easier way out, not the easy way out because he's not a coward, Harry chose the hardest thing to do. He had a chance to turn back, only he didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. Holding on to the hope we had when we started our quest is a thing that will help us continue in the darkest of times. We need a way to remind ourselves every day of the quest we have chosen, why we chose it, and then use that to spur us forward. Hold on. Hold fast. What are we holding on to, Sam? Frodo isn't quite convinced yet. That there's good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Boom. Absolutely incredible. This is the essence of embracing the quest while having full realization of the tragic world we live in. The world is a dark place, full of danger, with little hope. We cannot go back to the way things were before. We set out on this quest to make a difference because we had hope, and now a shadow is over us, which makes it hard to keep going. It feels physically impossible to keep going, but we must. There is evil and darkness and shadows in the world, but there is also hope and courage and honor. There is good, and we need to fight for it. So, regardless of the tragedy of the world we live in and the life we live inside of that world, I choose to fight for good.